Well, thank you, Michael. And good afternoon. Delighted to be. Is it afternoon yet, or are we still in the morning? I'll be brief. I know we're on the edge of the lunch hour. Rewilding is sweeping the world. There's a continental program in Europe, a national campaign in Britain and the United Kingdom that is run by a director who reports immediately to the Prime Minister. Rewilding projects are developing rapidly around the world. This one runs all the way down to the sea, following the rivers through Wellington. This particular one in Edmonton rewilded their urban rivers to permanize wildlife corridors. 2013, Ireland started their national campaign to rewild their national rivers, and that's led to the recent announcement last March that Dublin is going to rewild Phoenix Park, which of course you all know is the largest urban park in Europe, at least since 1785. I went over to Dublin last February to give a lecture about wilding, packed up a suitcase full of sweaters and rain gear, only to encounter the hottest day in the history of Ireland, 72 degrees. And this is the point that brings us to Dallas. Did you know they used to call Dallas Manhattan on the Prairie? I mean, look at all those theaters. But Manhattan on the Prairie gave way to a metroplex. 7-some million acres, about the same number of people. It's filled with lots of interesting conditions. One of the downtown area seems to rise up and out of an open landscape. But the one that's really been fascinating me is all of this low-density sort of civilization is teeming with wildlife. Eagles are nesting, rookeries are forming, and if you're wondering, why is this happening? All of that low-density civilization is directly in the path of the central migratory flyway. In addition to all the avian life, there are families of wildcats traversing the watershed network. She is indeed beautiful, but that is not kitty cat. That is 20-pound warning sign. Biology programs are studying them, actually trapping them, putting radio collars and kind of studying their movements as they go through some very tony neighborhoods. One group even made a documentary renaming DFW Bobcat City because there's so many. Now, I know what you're thinking about right now. You're thinking, this is the guy that loves critters, right? Wildlife. That's not the point. The point is, all of this is existing in a completely unmanaged situation. This is a drone photograph of feral hogs tearing up our watershed network and waterway park hike and bike trails. These things are tremendously pernicious and destructive. You know, in articles like these op-eds and other design journals, I've been extolling, trying to get the word out on rewilding, the benefits it can have to essentially manage existing issues, but also to concentrate biodiversity as a program within new design projects. D Magazine picked up on those and actually devoted an entire issue in March 2017 rebranding Dallas potentially as a wild city. 3 months later, the New York Times caught up, and they offered this Sunday feature about the economic benefits of urban wildlife watching. A rewilding project begins before you draw a single line by establishing a program of plant and non-human animal species that become essentially like an architectural program for that project. Not all species are possible, given obviously contextual parameters. Those creatures, that program then informs relationships, much like architects do for buildings, and then in the same thought stream, human activity is mapped into the rewilding so that the two conditions can coexist in equilibrium. The fourth thing is the one that throws designers into a tailspin. Rewilding projects are not maintained. That doesn't mean they're abandoned. It's just that they're not taken all back to an original conceit, a kind of an original sort of image. they are curated. They're nurtured to change, to evolve, like the great 20th century artists who embraced chance operation. They're always sort of tended by us with them towards the next condition of equilibrium. China is getting ready to spend $3.2 billion US to rewild the green spaces in Beijing. They're using the word rewilding. Why are they doing this? Well, one reason is to improve their air quality situation, which is, as you can see, quite formidable. But when I kept running on this phrase, they want to do it for tourist revenue, very kind of close to their chest with their stats, I was trying to dig around what it is where they were onto, and up pops this. An economic study of the economic benefits of wildlife watching in our state. It came right back into my office and onto my desktop. Now get ready for these numbers, because I know you're seeing birders, kind of khakis and binoculars, but wait till you see what they produce. Every year, over 1 million wildlife watchers come to Texas for the purpose of observing wildlife, not to hunt it, just to watch. They spend north of $250 million on traffic, $1 billion on equipment and services. When all taken together, it's about $11 billion of economic production. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is a 2001 study that has not yet been updated by Parks and Wildlife. There's a lot of tremendous potential here, but we've got to get moving. Dallas and Texas has got to get moving because Chicago is already building the Wild Mile. This is a project, as you can see down at the bottom, that's going to transform their city rivers into wildlife sanctuaries. An amazing kind of mismatch of possibility. I was so fascinated, I called up Blair Kamen, and he gave me over an hour of time. He's the Pulitzer Prize-winning architectural critic with the Chicago Tribune, and he wanted me to share a thought with all of you when I told him why I was speaking. He said to share that adding wildlife into a city is the next step in a revolution that's been transforming former industrial sites and urban places, as you can see, to paraphrase, into vital and spur economic development. Close quote. Well, it's wonderful that Chicago has a wild 1 mile. We have the potential for hundreds. According to the author with Trinity Works who made this map, there are over 900 miles of watershed corridors that are part of that diagram, and Isaac will tell you even more when you speak with him. We take for granted how big this metropolitan area is, and then when we realize that this network is all that's left of the original Blackland Prairie, then we understand how the math adds up. I got from an earlier enthusiasm I called the Branch Waters Network. It was a speculation I started sometime around 2012, 2013, of using the watershed corridors and the nature along them to aggregate density patterns. There were articles about this to get this idea out because I wanted to point out it wasn't an original idea. This is an idea that essentially Turtle Creek demonstrates for over 100 years, where an otherwise ordinary ravine, once a remnant of the Blackland Prairie, concentrated and produced culture and urbanism. Here, people would live in high-rises when the good life in Texas usually meant a large house on an even larger noble estate. My private practice curates a website mainly just to traverse and traffic information and news. I hope to put this conference up on it and just share. And the work of our private practice and the things we build have been stepstones leading us to all this. The Dallas Urban Reserve was a real estate project of 50 modernist homes all along a biofiltering street that we designed. It was started around 2003. It wasn't a rewilding project yet because we didn't make that inventory. It was a water conservation project. And in capturing and harvesting the water, processing it, recirculating at low velocities, we were amazed at all this wildlife that showed up, wood ducks and all kinds of amphibians that were getting in these water storage ponds. That led to this project. Well, this is the before picture anyway, of an abused spring. Underneath the Blackland Prairie originally was an entire continuous shelf of limestone that are sheet springs. and essentially, as you can see, was getting in the way of progress and being mistreated. We took it and transformed it into a 17-acre public park. The point is not the landscape architecture. The point is that the nature is attracting a mid-rise density along it in a context that is an otherwise suburban mindset. I don't know how to describe this. I would look to anyone to help me understand it, but there seems to be something about nature that helps a largely suburban culture accept living in tighter, more intimate urban formations. We did this collaboration with OMA down along downtown, and it ended up winning quite wonderfully, quite humbly, a National Planning Award for the ASLA. I want to finish with this project, one that really, I think, cemented our interest. This is the Airfield Falls Conservation Park. It is the product of a relic of the Blackland Prairie. This is the tallest natural waterfall in North Texas. It's about the height of Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water. We're proud to say. And as such, we didn't touch it. We did not hang anything over or intrude upon it. You just kind of drift across the prairie to get to it. Archaeologists are now taking a very interesting look into it. But we rewilded the path that takes you to it for pollinators, songbirds, and an occasional flock of turkeys that actually lives along the creek corridor that leads you to it. As a précis to this, you arrive in a 2-acre, what's called, in the parlance of things, a trailhead, where since this property used to be inside of Carswell Air Force Base, and miraculously, during the height of the Cold War, that natural waterfall was not destroyed for building fuel lines or whatever. We actually sort of introduced a piece of landscape architecture. We went over to the boneyard, found a pair of wings and a tail section with the help of J.D. Granger and with the great engineering talents of Thomas Taylor in Dallas. We put them back together. The right wing and that green navigation light are pointing the way towards the waterfall. It's a project that is a water conservation and didactic landscape up front, a rewilded landscape in the middle, and an untouched, preserved waterfall at the end. Very proud that the 30 acres of affected territory only cost about $1.6 million for us to build. It's a very tactical kind of approach. One last thing, a little announcement. As an appendage to the Branch Waters Network, my office is announcing the establishment of Rewild US, or if you'd like to say it more in the Latin terms, Rewildus. And we're ironing out some paperwork, and we'll go up and active probably within a week or two. I can tell you the t-shirts look very, very cool. Thank you so much for your time.